llenar sus zapatos. Es una mesa que tratamos de dedicar un poco a la discusión sobre el estado del cine contemporáneo, con algunos de los cineastas más representativos, de los que creemos que son los más representativos del Estado, que son síntomas, no solo eso, sino exponentes, y que plantean nuevos caminos de lo que es el cine del presente. En esta ocasión nos acompaña una mezcla de cineastas que forman parte de la competencia Nuevo Horizonte, así como de otras secciones que ahorita explicaré, como aquellos que participan en la competencia Más allá del Canvas o en la competencia de cortometrajes con el mismo nombre, que en este año se rebrandeó, se cambió el nombre con el mismo nombre de la competencia de largometrajes, buscando vincularlas un poco más en una idea de vinculación, de entender esa competencia más allá de lo que es el lenguaje cortometraje. Voy a empezar con las presentaciones de izquierda. Voy con acordeón para no cometer ningún tipo de error. I'm going to switch to English after the introductions, if it's okay for the rest. Elena López Riera nos acompaña, presenta la película El Agua en la competencia Nuevos Horizontes. Elena López Riera es doctora en comunicación audiovisual, cineasta, programadora y docente. Sus trabajos han sido expuestos en festivales como Cannes, Locarno, San Sebastián, Cinema Dugal, Río de Janeiro, Hiroshima, Fidox, Cali y Reykjavik. Su cortometraje Los que desean ha sido distinguido con el Pardo de Oro en Locarno y nominado a los European Films Awards, entre otros premios. Como programadora, ha trabajado en el Festival de Entrevue de Belfort, el Festival Europeo de Sevilla y el Festival de Visions Dugal, donde formó parte del comité de selección. Ha enseñado en las universidades de Ginebra, Valencia y Carlos III en Madrid. Su película El Agua, que es su ópera prima largometraje, estrenó en la sección quincena de realizadores del Festival de Cannes hace un par de meses. Muchas gracias, Elena. También nos acompaña desde Nueva York, para el mundo, Ricky D'Ambrose. Ricky D'Ambrose presenta su película The Catedral en la sección Nuestros Días. Ricky D'Ambrose es escritor y director con sede en la ciudad de Nueva York. Su primer largometraje, Notes on an Appearance, se estrenó en 2018 en el Festival de Cine de Berlín. Sus cortometrajes han sido incluidos en las selecciones oficiales de Nueva York, Viena y Jeonju, entre otros. En 2017 fue nombrado como uno de los 25 nuevos rostros del cine independiente por la revista Filmmaker, así como uno de los mejores nuevos cineastas de la década por Richard Brody de la revista New Yorker. Ricky, thank you so much for joining us. Al lado de Ricky se encuentra Daniela Zahlner, nacida en Austria en los años 80. Su trabajo está enfocado entre el cine, las artes interdisciplinarias y el performance. Estudió cine en la Escuela Friedel Kubelka en Viena y filme y teoría de medios y artes altas en Viena y Glasgow. Daniela, thank you for joining us. A mi lado derecho se encuentra Blake Williams, artista y cineasta residente en Toronto, donde también escribe críticas de cine, cofundador de la productora Blue Magenta. Sus películas en 3D se han proyectado internacionalmente, incluidos los festivales de Toronto, el Festival de Locarno, Berlinale, el Museo del Arte Moderno de Nueva York. Su película, realizada en conjunto con Burak Shevik y Sofía Bogdanovich, A Woman Escapes, también forma parte de la competencia Nuevos Horizontes. Muchas gracias, Blake. Charlie López nos acompaña junto con su fotógrafo Sebastián Garro. Ambos son de Costa Rica, son realizadores, editores y fotógrafos, parte de la Escuela de Cine de la Universidad de Veritas de San José, Costa Rica. Los Nadadores es un ensayo inspirado en las fotografías de piscinas del artista Ed Ruscha. Es su primer cortometraje realizado, tengo entendido, por ambos o en conjunto, fuera de la academia. Muchísimas gracias por acompañarnos. Ellos son los que representan en este caso la sección de cortometraje Nuevo Horizonte. Y por último tuvimos la oportunidad de que nos acompañara Anders Embelm, que nació en 1985 en Alesund, en Noruega. Ha pasado los últimos 10 años en la universidad haciendo estudios de cine, viajando por el mundo y trabajando como trabajador social. A Human Position, estrenada este año en el Festival de Rotterdam, es su segundo largometraje después de Hurry Slowly. A Human Position también forma parte de la competencia Nuevo Horizonte. Anders, thank you for joining us. So I have to switch to English in this moment. I want to thank you all. It's really hard in this conversation when we are so many people like in the stage, coming from different competitions with different approaches to cinema, to talk about these films in specific. But I want to try to address your films by taking some topics in the general aspects of it, talking about a little bit about the state of cinema nowadays. This is going to be a really wide approach question that you can take wherever you want it, and I think will be really interesting for starting from there, so we can later on take it some of the points that are going to be set on the table. I'm wondering how you see the work that you have been doing, working from short films to lengths in other aspects that you have been doing, like writing film criticism, programming, social working, studying. You as a part of Six Pack Film as well as part of a sales agency and distribution company. How do you see how do you relate your work with the contemporary state of cinema in the world? Thinking of how do you feel that you belong to any kind of, let's say, tendency, or you see that it's completely like something that doesn't belong to any kind of thing? That's like, it's like really, really like trying to see from that point, from this question, I want to see how you see the state of cinema nowadays and how do you think that you relate to it? And this is an open question that I would like to make Blake to start first. You wanted to be next to me.
Hi, I'm Blake. Yeah, I don't know about. I don't try to think too much about my place within things. I just try to do my own thing, and I guess like I come from a critical side of cinema also. Like I write for Filmmaker Magazine and CinemaScope Magazine, but I've also been, that's something that I started doing after being a filmmaker for a number of years. And so it was a way of kind of exercising another part of my brain, just because when I'm making films, I'm taking a very intuitive approach and trying to create images and experiences and sensations that that feel alien to me or unusual to me, and try to find new expressions of beauty. And when I'm writing criticism, I feel like I can't. It's not as intuitive of an approach. I have to you have to articulate things and think through things very carefully. And I'm not so careful about thinking when I'm editing or shooting. I'm coasting on feeling instead. And so with regards to contemporary cinema, I don't know. I think it's a big mess right now, but in a good way. Like the identity of cinema right now is going in so many directions. I don't even know if I can have some sort of like conceptual notion of what is going on. But I try to make movies as detached from any sort of template of making movies that I notice on the festival circuit, when I go to festivals writing about films, going to Cannes, often Berlin, to Toronto International Film Festival because I live there, and just most movies just seem to be following in some sort of mode of the tradition that they occupy, and I try not to. I try to break from any sort of template or form of that seems in any way familiar to the best that I can. And so, yeah, I'll let someone else carry on from there.
Well, I live and work in the United States, in New York, and I'm not sure if I ever had, I never really sought out a connection to, what's called the industry in the United States. It never really was part of the fantasy or what I imagined doing as a filmmaker. I've always thought of what I've been doing in New York with kind of like-minded filmmaker friends who are working at a very similar scale as but pretty independent of what goes through the credentializing process in the United States. And I realize, I say this as someone who just made a feature that played at what is thought of as the kind of summit of the industry in the United States for independent filmmakers, which is Sundance, which is very unusual for me because as I was saying, I never really had much of a relationship to that circuit, that bureaucracy in the United States. But in terms of with the state of cinema, I don't, I'm not prepared to answer that. I can only keep my head down, or try to do the work that I think is most honest to me and that reflects the things I care about. And that in itself can be very difficult because there's very few resources. As an American, it's a matter of cobbling together the money and the people you know and like-minded friends to make the kinds of movies that don't necessarily have a commercial upshot in the way that Sundance might think of a film as having a commercial upshot.
Thank you. Thank you. I think nobody is prepared to answer this question. Well, at least not me. And also my English is awful, so I apologize for it, but I will try to do my best. I think it's very different depending where you live and where you work, because we are lucky in a certain way in Europe because we have like public support to do film. If I don't know very well the States, but I think it's harder when you don't belong to the industry. So I think in a certain way we are kind of privileged to make films that we want to make with some support from the public funding. So from my very personal perspective, as a programmer and as a filmmaker, for me, it was very helpful also to be a programmer because as we were discussing yesterday at dinner, it helps me while I'm trying not to be so egocentric, egolatrous as a filmmakers, because there's a lot of films super interesting all around the world, and it gives you another perspective of contemporary cinema, but also of classical cinema, of history of cinema, and you also realize that this is what I saying to myself, that my film is going to be forget like in 6 months, and it's okay. It's like keep going and keep trying to discover new forms and new things. And also, as you mentioned, I think there are so many different ways of doing films today that it's hard to decide where you are. At least I'm kind of, I don't know where I am, but I think it's not, I think it's okay. And the most interesting thing is just to keep searching for new forms of telling stories, or not telling stories, just to make films. And I also thanks a lot to festivals, because it's a very good melting point of different point of view. And I'm not sure that my answer is very clear or intelligent, but I'm trying to do my best with my jet lag and my bad English and answering this very hard question. So.
I'm not sure if I have a better answer. Yeah, I'm not sure about the state of cinema. I think there's different cinemas and different audiences and many different tastes, and definitely trends on what gets programmed and shown and distributed even. So some things are more visible and others are not so visible, which I find more hard sometimes. And I live in Austria, and there's good funding system for film, and have an experimental film background, and the scene there is quite big. And I also work in distribution for experimental films. So, but the films that I myself make, there are basically no budget films, so I am funding most of it myself, and I really enjoy the freedom I have that comes with it. And I think it's also an artistic decision. How do you want to work, and in what spheres you want to socialize or live with your work? So I think it's also, that plays a role, yeah, a more personal decision. Yeah.
Yeah, I have my own. Yeah, it is a very big question to talk about the state of cinema. I don't think I'm, the person to answer that question, at least not in general. But I can tell you about the state of cinema in my own context, I think, and not as a filmmaker, as a student filmmaker context. I don't think that's rather interesting. I believe the most interesting context for me to speak about is as a Costa Rican filmmaker, being from a place who, in the last 5 years, is beating the odds, in terms of filmmaking. 5 years ago or 6 years ago, the cinema history in my country was pretty plain, almost non-existent, very, a very underwhelming amount of movies historically made in the country. And in the last 5-6 years, it kind of, besides against the odds, because there is very, very few support from the government, and it's getting, the budget for culture is getting cut more and more every year. We've been able to kind of like grow in, in a very weird way. We've had Costa Rican filmmakers, mostly women, in Berlin and in Cannes and in San Sebastian. We as a country, not me, won Locarno, Best Director, Best Actor, Best Actress this year. So I think that, it's in my context, the state of cinema is growing and beating the odds. And if I could associate that idea and that context to a more general image, a more global image, from what I see in my country and from what I see and what I consume as a member of the audience, I think that is the films are getting weirder in a good way. Obviously, we don't, most spaces don't believe in the separations. It used to be many days ago, the separation between documentary and fiction. That is no more. And I think what's interesting and what I see in these movies and what I see that these movies reflect is that these movies that have been very successful and that are fictions are getting, that documentary tint or getting that film essay tint. And it's getting into a mixture of experimental and fiction and conventional, and, like a mix of all of those things. So that's what I see, at least from where I am now, as the state of cinema.
All right. State of cinema. I think from what I think it's very messy to understand cinema now because of the whole streaming wars and how things are changing that way. At the same time, it seems like festival it sort of handled the pandemic and its back, even though we see some are getting cut down and all that stuff. It seems like people want films that are different from what you see on Netflix, and but maybe it's a more divided industry than before. So I think we need to start getting new words for different types of films instead of just filmmaking, because that can be a very bad Netflix series, and it could be the best films in the festivals. So I think it's a bit more spreading out, but at the same time, anyone can make a film now, which looks good enough with no money, basically, because of equipment. The problem is that when they want to take that next step, there's not a lot of funding to get there. And as for us in Europe, we have funding, but that's also very limited. And but at least we can get funding and don't care about what people want us to make, in a way, for the most part. So how people do it in the States, I'm not sure. How you sort of get funding on the next level, it's a bit beyond me. And the first question was something about our backgrounds going into making films. And it seems like everyone here has some sort of academic background or a critical background. Because myself I didn't go to a film school, but I did film studies. So I think that's a healthy sign for most part, that filmmakers have some background in knowing the history or theory or whatever. And as a social worker, mostly just, I think that just gives you a idea of some issues to make films about, or and for me in Norway, which is from the outside might look like a place with no issues, there's still things to fight about, at least within Norway and within Scandinavia. So there's no, it's always good to have a background when you go into it.
Listening to all of you, I think the common thing that we all have is the uncertainty in what the future will hold as much as form of film and our way of being in contact with it. Festivals more and more seem to be finding niches that were further away from them before. And I think for us that are trying to find a different voice or a voice truer to ourselves, that's better because we get closer to an audience that feels something with our films, and that encourages us to keep on that inner search for what we think is the cinema that we want to be out there and that we enjoy watching as well. And I think that's like a virtuous cycle, you know. The more audiences that wouldn't be able to come into contact with these weird films or these different films or films that speak about marginalized communities or people that did not have a voice before, these audiences are getting closer to those films, and that helps us to keep bringing forward the themes or forms that we enjoy the most. As for Costa Rica, to add on to what Charlie said, we're very encouraged for the critical acclaim that we are getting despite not having the public funding or in industry to fall back on or to be supported by. So it's motivating, really. And we've been part of some of those projects ourselves, and being on set and watching artists struggle through their vision and bring it to light is really inspiring. So we hope we can do the same as well.
No, actually, listening to you all, I think as well as you describe, one of the things that I highlight between all of you, it's that the funding issues in a way, you know, like how it's really hard to make these films. It's actually a really tough struggle, because I think all of you here present in a way represent a kind of resistance, because even though some of the films belong to a certain kind of industry, that it's the film festival industry, the film festival industry is not precisely the most prolific, let's say it in a way. And something that we had the chance to talk to you on yesterday, it's how it's really hard to deal with the idea that sometimes a film, it has to be forgotten at one point, but that you can see sometimes that his life or the life of the film itself, there's no beyond the film festival sometimes, no? And I'm wondering about, I know that you don't make films to please audiences, any of you. You don't have those things in mind, but I try to remember the exact words of Blake that he said, and I think one of his first phrases was to try to address in different ways to beauty, or something like that. It was really beautiful, man. Anyway, my point with this, it's like you all having this struggle to give voice to certain stories that are not part of the mainstream, to approach from different formal cinematographical kind of things. But how do you deal a bit with this thing about how your film can connect with other audiences, meaning understanding that you don't make to please nobody, but you are making the films to be seen? If not, we will not be all here together trying to talk between each other, no?
So I actually think a lot about the audience when making films, because I hear the normal thing is to say that you do it for yourself, like Blake said, and of course we do. It's like we are very naive and very crazy to make films with no budgets that are mostly won't be seen by anyone. But I think it's maybe another level is that you think really about how to make films for people who they don't know what they want to see in a way. So you have to try and think, I want to make a film in my way, but how can I make general people enjoy it and maybe sort of teach them how to watch films in a different way, because it is difficult now with the how commercial things are. And I lost my train of thought. But so for instance, for my film, it's people get surprised when they manage to watch the film. Like in the beginning it was very slow, but then there was some nice images. It was beautiful. They used the word a lot, beautiful, because I think if you make a film in a certain way, you're allowed to see beauty in a different way, instead of just flashing and talking and shot for shots. So I think I think people really appreciate it, but they really have to be taught how to appreciate it, and that's why festivals are very important. And but as we have funding in Europe for public funding, we have very little for cinemas, for what's called getting the film out there to cinemas to show smaller films that you will lose money on showing. And that, I think, is maybe a bigger problem than actually funding and all that stuff.
It's not like my answer is going to be bright. Yeah, when it comes to audiences, I mean, yeah, it would be weird, and it would be, at least for me, it would be incorrect to say that we don't necessarily think about the audiences. There is an audience for every film, for every project. It might be big or it might be small, but there is an audience. The fact that you would be doing it to police that specific audience is a whole different theme and a whole different thing that I don't agree with. But I think the audiences, maybe at the start of the start of the project, at least for me, they're not in mind. But as it gets, made, the thought of them starts to, grow. And you have to think about the audience when you're editing, at least for me, because it's not thinking if they're gonna like it or not, but thinking what effect, trying to dissociate from the material as the maker and more as the audience, and to have at least a little bit of sense of what sensations or what feelings or what experiences that the people are gonna have, because you want them to be, at the end of the day, at least for me, is you want them to feel something. It varies from every project, and it varies from every scene, and for every character it might be. But I do care about their experience or their overall feeling when they watch the movie.
I mean, I wouldn't say that I don't know if I said this but I wouldn't say that I don't think about an audience or anything when I'm making something, but I often think about something that I heard the Canadian, Toronto-based artist and filmmaker Michael Snow say at a talk that he gave about 10 years ago, I think, in Toronto. During the Q&A, someone asked him about a similar question about audiences and why he makes what he makes, and he just said, I just make what interests me, and I rely on the fact that I am a person, and it's very unlikely that the thing that interests me is I am the only person alive who it interests. Like, there's something universal to interest, probably, and other people like you will see it and respond, and other people will see it and they won't respond. Sometimes I'll screen a film and I'll check some critic ratings or go to Letterboxd and see what audiences are thinking of it, and of course, like, you see, it usually runs the spectrum of, like, many people liked it and other people don't. And the important thing is that there were some people who liked this. So there's some people who are on the same wavelength and have the same sensibility that I do, and that's great. I don't need to make something that's universally connecting with everyone. Like, that to me is not so important. But yeah, and with regards to funding, I mean, if I were making movies with funding, I would have never made a movie before because I've never received any funding. I've been applying for money to make a new feature for about 3 years now, but I haven't gotten any yet. But in a way, I think that makes the work more interesting because I'm working in a mode with stereoscopic 3D technology that a lot of people kind of associate with expense and excess and this kind of blockbuster mentality, and yet I'm making very intimate small movies that are handmade, DIY approaches to the format. And so the fact that they have this elevated scale in the production format that creates a dissonance with the sensibility behind it and the I don't know, the money behind it, which is zero. I don't know. I think that creates an interesting tension in the work that is good.
Just quickly, yeah, I think making films with no budget that's how you learn to find your language in a way. So I might now actually get funding for a new film, and I don't know what to do. It's very difficult to sort of think that, oh, now we have maybe, like, if we get through the whole system, we might get 1 million euros. No, but then still, it's how do you spend money in a way? And do you have to listen to other people's voices more? Do you have to all that stuff? I hope not, but it's a bit of a scary thing. And but luckily, I've made 2 films, so I'm a bit set in my ways. And I'm guessing if you also get funding, you will make the same or follow your same filmmaking thing.
Just quickly, the other thing about funding is that you have to conceptualize what you're going to do. And obviously you don't have to describe every step you're going to take in the production, but like there's a certain fact of submitting a concept and a kind of theoretical basis, or not theoretical, but like a research basis. Like you've put thought into the subject or the topic that you're going to make the movie about, and therefore demonstrate that it is worth giving money to you so that you can make it. But for me, when I'm working, I'm working very much on the fly, and I'm often shooting without any particular idea of what a shot will be used for later, or if it will be used later. But at some point, I will have a database of footage, and I will have a sense of a movie that can arise from some pieces of that database, and then certain pieces will fit together, and then that will spark an idea for something else to fit together. And at some point, I look at it and I'm like, oh, the movie's done. But of course, with funding, you can't really have that approach. You have to think about it before, and it's not very conducive to these to a particular style of working that I have found more successful for me. So,
Well, the only time I ever did get any kind of funding was for the cathedral, but it was from the Italians. It was not from the United States. It was through the Venice Biennale College, and I don't know if people here are familiar with it, but it's a very good program in terms of allowing first and second time feature-length, mainly narrative filmmakers to get 150,000, I think now it's 200,000 euro, to shoot their film. And you have to shoot it under a very compressed timeline. You have to do it in less than a year, and you're working very closely with people. But I mean, to Blake's point, I mean, there is a certain amount of packaging and conceptualizing and articulating the thing that is really, at least in my mind, very hazy and defined beforehand. And that, depending on who you are temperamentally or who you are as a filmmaker, that can be somewhat freeing, or that could lead you into a kind of trap of trying to anticipate what the selection committee, so to speak, would want. In my case, though, as someone who prior to this has financed his movies privately with my own money, or my shorts cost very little money, and my first feature was made for $30,000 through a crowdfunding campaign. There is already built into the design of my own films a very careful preparation. So the format or the expectations of applying for a grant, for me personally, they're not that removed from the way I tend to work generally. But the opportunity to have what to me is 2 or 3 times the budget of my first feature to make a film that I had been thinking about for many, many years was a great thing to me. And I speak as someone who received a grant that had really no strings attached. There were no expectations. That there was no Venice house style imposed on the grant recipients. It was, here's the money, we trust you, we like what you've provided us. And I think that is a very different model than it would be in the States if you were to get private equity, as they call it. If you were to go to Los Angeles and take meetings with production companies, that's a very, very different vision of filmmaking than what this, I think, really encouraging thing that Venice does is. That's my Venice plug. Oh, yes.
Well, I think we all have very different experiences, and it's nice also to hear from all of you. In my particular case, I apply for public funding, and I submit a script, and we have the money, and we have like regular money for funding a feature film in Europe. And I was thinking about what you say about what can we do with this huge amount of money, because at the beginning you think it's huge. And I had the same feeling, but then you pay people for their work. And this is a very important thing that when I don't used to have money before, you are always asking for favors, and there's something politically don't correct for me, is also to ask people to work for free for you. So public, just to give another maybe perspective, is that this huge amount of money from the very beginning, you think, wow, 1 million euros is like not for buying a house. This 1 million euros is, it took me like 5 years to make my film. So I pay the script, I pay the scriptwriter, I pay the casting director, I pay the actors, the DOP. And I was happy at the end to finally could pay my friends to work on my film. So there's something also, it was hard to get that money, and I'm totally agree with you. It depends on the way you make films, and sometimes it's super hard to, it came from documentary background, and so for me it was like kind of super weird to anticipate what is going to happen before the shooting. But then sometimes I also think about which is the good model to do it, because it's also public money, from the government. So you need to prove that you are going to do something with that money. It's not a private money, so it's hard to find the balance, and maybe we can figure out other models of submitting materials to get this public money for you. But I don't know. For me, the script is the worst idea of the world, but they are still using this model, so I don't know if we can imagine other models.
So it was more comfortable. More when you can pay people, it's less stress.
I slept better.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily more comfortable because it's hard to get money, but at the end of the journey, these people could pay their rent thanks to this money. So it's something politically for me important also, just to pay, because a lot of people think oh, you got your 1 million euros or 2 million or whatever, or 300. It's not about the amount of money, but just to have a little money to pay your friends, because I think me, as a lot of people here, maybe you ask also to do favors to your friends during years and years, and then at the end, they need to pay their rents and food, and we all need to pay it. So I don't know if it's an answer.
And if I can just add to that, I'm obviously it's very different in very different countries in which there are different labor laws. But in the United States, for better or for worse, I found in my working and casting that some of the, I wouldn't call the more talented actors, but certainly the more prepared actors, the actors who I thought were the kinds that I wanted to recruit for the film I just made, were unionized with the Screen Actors Guild. And whether you want to or not, they do have to be paid a day rate, and it has to be per very complicated contracts. So at a certain point, the ability to get away with, unless they're background actors doing it for free, it becomes very difficult to cast and shoot a film in the United States with actors of a certain caliber without, adhering to that, those rates. But that's very particular to the States.
Hearing you talking, and I think it's something that we all know, that making this kind of films, it's a constant battle. It's always a struggle, no? And what you're describing for me is like a struggle for freedom in a way. That is what you're looking for. It's like talking about what you said, Anders, it's like a yin and yang, no? If you want to make this kind of films, you have to do it like you're doing it. But doing it like you're doing it is as well a pain in the ass, in short. So, but trying to step out a bit of an industrial economical thing, I would like to ask you about this search for freedom, let's say, about this creative process of how that is between this struggle of trying to find the money to sleep tight at night. At the same time, you have to think about where to set the camera, in the editing room, what are you going to do with the images, with the sound. Charlie mentioned something that I really like as well, that when he's doing it, his only goal thinking about the audience is to make them feel something, no? And I think it's at the end, everybody's looking here at that. And I'm just curious if you want to let us know a bit about that creative process, that it's about freedom, for example, freedom struggling with the unionized actors of New York, things like that.
So back to how you sort of develop your language through you make what you are able to make, because you are seeking sort of freedom from how can you have the most freedom of making something within the no budget you have, or with the things you have around you. And it's for me, it turned out that I just have to really think about what's available around me, what kind of locations can I find, and not write anything specific before I know I have this place, this place, this place, maybe those actors and those people. Then I can write down. So back to the industry, it's very difficult for me to write a script to seek production funding, because I try to write the script very late, even though I make films very conventionally. The script is something I don't want to make right before the end, in a way. But I think it's definitely I found a sort of freedom in the language I've developed in that. So I had interest in the elements of the film I make. So static camera and long images and all that stuff. But it really has developed into a practical thing as well. Like now I only think how I can make the film, because of the language is so set that I know how to use spaces and people, and how to write that non-actors can act in a way, and all that stuff. And I think I forgot the actual question. Was that? Yeah.
Yeah, I cannot. Yeah, when it comes to creative processes, I'm not in the stage of my life where I can answer this question combining the creative process and the funding, because I'm a student. So, obviously there are no really like artistic limitations or creative limitations imposed by a school. I'm obviously not writing or planning on doing anytime soon anything fantastically expensive. So yeah, that being in this stage of my life, it's very well, actually, I'm going to speak about the actual project, about the swimmers, about the short film. It was a very free process and a freeing experience, because we were currently, we were working, we were developing our thesis short inside of the academy, with a lot of tutorships, with a lot of classes that revolve around that project. And there's an academic aspect of it, is the thesis, so there's obviously theory and investigation, and this whole other aspect, and also writing it is not very very close to home. And I'm talking about my father, and I'm it got to a very almost like therapeutic level, and the developing that thesis short was like that. So before filming, we had a little bit of time, and I was like, the process started feeling a little bit rigid or stiff. So I wanted to do something that was just playing, something that was playful, and that's how the Swimmers was born, essentially. With the is a very inexpensive film to make, doing it between friends, because everybody wants to, we had done short films before, the people like the idea, it's all in favors, all in, everybody putting their own money, and it was just for the sake of filming or doing or having fun and embracing the naivete, or the naiveness of the film language. And so there, with it was attached to the fact that it's almost like a free adaptation of a photography book by American artist Ed Boucher, which is a very provocative book that is just the book is called 9 Swimming Pools and a Broken Glass. The book has 10 pages, 9 swimming pools, 9 photographs of swimming pools, 1 photograph of a broken glass. So I was like, oh, that's amazing. That's so rock and roll in a way, and it's a provocative. So I wanted to do the same, and get away from the academy for a while, from this almost strict process that I still love, and we're currently editing that other short, and I love that process. But being able to not justifying anything to anyone, and just being playful and discovering in editing what we were trying to say, that was a very freeing experience. And obviously I was frightened, because I was like, oh, I'm so scared that this is just a formal, like, very beautiful pictures, slideshow of pictures. But no, then the process gets personal, and I find my brother there, and I find my mother there, and I find my father in those swimming pools. So with that freedom also, it was to play, but it was with that playfulness comes introspection in a way. He was going to be like, it's terrible.
Well, I think I have really little to add to what Charlie said, but the creative process for me as a cinematographer is always a contribution towards the director's already existent view on his story or her story. And what I tend to do, that's my personal approach to cinematography, is to empower that as much as I can, and to free it as much as I can, and allow the language and technical aspect of which I'm concerned to not be a concern to the director, And so in all our different creative processes that we've shared along the years, Charlie and I, we've found a way to economically and easily and like time efficiently get to a aesthetic and narrative point that we both enjoy. And so The Swimmers was a project in which we wanted to find new ways and break free from those formulas that we've constructed over the years and over the short films that we've done. And that was a really enriching process that took our work to places that we hadn't, because of the time that we took to consciously work differently. And I think that's a process we both really enjoyed, and seeing people enjoy it as well it has been really amazing. And I think that reflects back to the question and the earliest question about the future of cinema and the state that we are in right now. And I feel that more artists are taking their time to find new ways to make things, because technologically and also financially, there's new ways of getting to make your films, and that empowers different views and different pathways to filmmaking.
I think the ability to even place the camera somewhere is a great privilege. I find that as soon as you have a cinematographer, you're less free in a way. As soon as you have the cinematographer's AC, assistant camera person, and then the second AC, you are less free. It reminds me of this story, I wish I remember. I don't know if it was Antonioni or someone who had just come to America to make his first film, make the Passenger or something. It was a risky point, and he said, here, if you want a glass of water on set, you don't just get the glass of water. You have to turn to the person next to you, who turns to the person next to them, who turns to the person next to them to get the glass of water. And you put up the more people you have on a set, and as I've learned with the slightly larger film I just made, the more difficult it becomes, because it takes simply, there's a chain of command that you have to go through. I find that just being able to look at a space or to walk into a room and to have some time with it and to think about how it could be visualized on screen is a kind of luxury that larger productions or with more personnel may not have for all kinds of reasons related to money. The little anecdote from the shoot that I finished last year on the Cathedral was that I, for the first time, was working with a production designer, which is responsible for the way that sets are dressed and for the kind of art direction of what you see on screen. And there was I was working with someone who told me, and this was surprising, that she wasn't used to dressing a set according to the frame in the monitor. She was used to being asked to put props into the entire room or the entire set. The filmmaker would then come in and say, well, I don't know where the camera's going to go today, and let's have the whole set dressed so then we can figure it out. But that's not the way I work, and I think that that's also a function of how, as someone, you mentioned you were a film studies major. I also was a film studies major. Something we were talking about earlier is that in the United States, there's a kind of mandate that you go through a film school process, and you kind of habituated into this mindset where it's about realism, and realism means dressing the entire set. And I don't find that freeing. I find that sinister.
It's also weird. It's because I think a lot about realism, and I think that's not realism in any way. Yeah. But yeah, I agree totally. If a cinematographer came up and said, "No, I don't like that frame," it wouldn't work. It's completely impossible. It's a bit of the director's ego, maybe, but for me, if I can't have the final say on where the frame is, it's useless to me. I wouldn't make films. That sort of thing. It's more important than anything. For me, a cinematographer is more of a assistant, the director's assistant, and someone I can talk to all the way from long before the script is made, and that they understand how I want to film. And so for this film, the cinematographer got sick under 2 weeks before, and he was a old friend and everything. So I was totally stressed out, and I got someone I met who I thought was nice. I didn't know if he knew technical stuff, but he did go to film school, so I guess he was good enough. But I sent him the script, and he liked my previous film. And then the first thing he asked, like, yeah, but can we have some shaky? Can we have a handheld at some point? towards the end for the dramatic effect and all that stuff. And I was like, no. And okay, yeah, I understand. And so it's very easy when they just give you ideas and try to help and try to make our images better. And along the way also develop the whole framework of images from the start off, and not coming in and saying, no, this, I like this better. So I'm wondering how, as a cinematographer, how that is.
I've had the privilege of working with many different directors that enjoy different types of assistance in that sense that you referred to. Some rely on you finding that aesthetic aspect, and they are really focused on the narrative and the content of what would be then on the shot, and they're not really worried about how it looks to them. And there's directors like you, and Charlie shares that with you very much, which is almost an obsession with the thing that they have inside them and that they want to see then manifested in the concrete monitor, you know. And I think that even though many times I feel that something would be better differently, I trust, and I need to trust in my director to have an overall vision that's in a narrative sense greater than what I'm concerned with, and as I said before, to facilitate them with what they need to make this story happen. I really do enjoy being like participating in pre-production and having creative inputs all the way through. And I do think that in those moments, a DOP's contributions towards a project are better received by directors that have this strict view, because they have time to make peace with other ways of images manifesting, or other ways of filming. And when you get to this point where there's technical aspects that would interfere with actors' work, because of time, because of the actor being involved with the camera in a stricter way, that's always a negotiation that has to happen with the director. But I think in the end, if the story is what is to be privileged, then the director's view should also be. You know.
And just that, like I make a lot of mistakes in finding the right frame as well. So it's like I set up the camera, like, he gives an idea of what we talked about, like this is frame. I was like, no, it's wrong. Like, go closer. There's another lens, whatever. And then you go back and forth, find, I don't know, 5 different frames, and then we get to the 6th, and like, yeah, this looks good. Yeah, this was the exact same as the first one I put up. So it happens all the time. But yeah. So we probably I haven't seen any films yet, so we make probably films very differently. And when I say handheld camera, it's because all my images are static. So it's just a break of the whole idea. So it might be very
I don't
different.
feel offense. It's okay. I move my camera, and it happens to me to ask to my art director to set all the setup. So because I came from documentary, and I never ever prepare what I'm going to shoot before the shooting, which is probably not a good idea, but I don't know how to do differently. So I have the chance to work with a crew which is very, very close to me, and we have done all the short films before together, and with my DOP as well, and so they kind of trust me or support or just try to change my mind, but they never reach to change my mind. So I guess that they love me as I am, whatever that means. And I don't know what to say, actually. I mean, because we were talking about freedom before, and then we were talking about moving cameras. And it was
Whatever you want.
whatever I want to say is like I feel free because I have the complicity of my crew, actually. and the support of my producer. I feel very lucky actually, because I have like, but this luckiness, it comes after 10 years of work as well, and that I've been trying to do like fiction film, but in a documentary way of filming, and without no film school background, so nobody teach me how to put a camera or how to make a film. I read a lot about film theory. I did a PhD and those stuff, but when I go to a set, I've never been in other ones, in other people's sets, so I don't know how other filmmakers do. So I just figure out how to do with
It's
my
probably,
feelings.
yeah, that's probably good. And the most important is that you know the people who you are closest with. So you know how each other work. And I think that's the key. Yeah.
But I work always with the same crew in my hometown, with my family. So, I mean, we how do you say in English, soportar? Support, no, it's not support, it's a false friend. No, como que me aguantan, como...
Yes, they bear you.
Yeah, they bury me, whatever, you know, like, they don't have the choice because they are my family, so...
I'm really happy that the tone of the conversation changed a bit. You want to say something, Ricky, or not? Because we were passing from sinister to... No, I'm not saying that. But it's good to not to talk about the things, because I was talking a lot about struggle and this fight, this battle, and now it's talking about enjoying, like, with your crew and having passed with your time with your family and things like that. The reason why you keep doing films is because you love it. You love films and you love to work it out. No, I'm gonna do a real lighter question that I think everyone can answer really easily, and it's, what's the thing that you most enjoy about this battle? What's the thing that makes you like say like, I really love this shit, even though it's really hard to do this shit? Like, I'm really wondering about that, because I'm gonna say just a little anecdote. I was in the opening party. I was talking with a Mexican director that has just set his first film. He's really talented. He has a lot of shorts that had been going internationally. He got a funding, and then the government took him out, and so he was half of this budget, and he had to finish the film in 2 weeks to actually address everything. And he said, like, he was setting a camera one day, and he said, I don't know what I'm doing this. And I'm gonna say something that maybe I shouldn't, but Claudio and I, we were last week watching this ourselves, like, because we are like a really humble team, and we were like staring at the eye and saying, why are we doing this to ourselves? Because we are killing basically ourselves. But we love to share the films. We could only grab a screener and rip it off and just share it with the people we love. But no, we love to have great guests as guests and to share with amazing audiences. So there's a process that we all love, and I was wondering if we try to cheer ourselves up for this Thursday and talk about lovely things about suffering.
I try to be short because I talk too much, but the second worst thing in the world is making films. It's just that not making films is worse. So for me, it's painful all the time. So that's the positive. But in retrospect, it's nice. You know, when I was younger, I traveled a bit more, and it's horrible to travel when you have no money and stuff like that. But afterwards, it's really rewarding, and it's sort of, you have to just go for whatever. It's the old cliche that it's the meaning of life you find. Like, you couldn't do it without, you can't do without it. And then within it, you meet a lot of nice friends. You go to Mexico and you go all these places, meet all these people, and it gives what you do a real value, even though many of us don't earn money from this yet. It's a really valuable thing, and you meet friends you'll have the rest of your life, and I think you learn about yourself, you grow that way. So it's a lot of good stuff. It's just that it's really stressful, same as making a festival, I assume. Is that core passion of, I really want to show films to people. The world needs to be seen, to be shown these films. And you have the quality, or you have the knowledge of what films are good and not good. And yeah, it's probably similar to that.
I mean, my favorite thing is just when I find something that works in the editing room, like, I mean, in my office, like I said, I kind of find the movie after I've just accumulated a lot of shots, and many of them just don't work. Even sometimes I really want them to work, and I'll put them next to each other, and I'll try to convince myself, like, yes, this is good. And but then you wake up in the morning and you look at it again, and it's just not right, and it makes you feel bad. And sometimes you find something that you shot 2 years ago that you shot next to something that you shot last week, and it creates something that you never would have expected. And those are the moments that create the addiction that make me want to just keep doing it, and then ideally just create an entire film that's nothing but those moments of creating these charges between shots and images, and then sharing that with people, and finding the 10% of the audience that actually responded well to it, and then you can go talk to those people and then forget everyone else. And yeah. Yeah.
I wonder how old everyone here on the stage was when they first, started to think about wanting to make films. I'm very haunted by my adolescence, which is when I decided to be a filmmaker. And I'm not going to engage in psychotherapy here, but there is something that there was the inciting incident at the age of 16. And I could think about the context of my discovery of filmmaking and thinking about films very seriously, and think about what was going on in my life at that time, and how that context continues to motivate what I do. It's implicit, it's not that present when I'm making films, but there certainly is something there that is I mean, look, depending on what kind of tradition of filmmaking you're working in, at least for myself, I don't have the luxury or the ability to do what a novelist can do or a painter can do. They can retire to their studio and do what they care about every day. Yes, I can write a script every day, but the thing that excites me the most, which is being on set and editing, can happen, if I'm lucky, once every 3 years. So there are other deep-seated resources, that emotional resources, psychological resources, whatever you want to call them, that get summonsed. And also, I think part of the creative life is being in contact with the things that I don't want to say that inspire you, but that the tradition that you're working in. I mean, I find watching movies and reading about movies to be just as exciting and formative as making movies. And because of those gaps, that's how I spend most of my time. And I think that's makes a contribution to that.
What I prefer is the shooting. Yeah, because I'm with people. And I hate the other parts. I hate editing, and I hate write the script. And I love festivals as well, but the part of the I love you, Pedro, but the part of the making films, but editing is a nightmare for me, and writing script.
For me, shooting is the worst. Yeah. I think your brain goes away, so you don't have control. You don't think you were able to do what you thought you were doing, and everything is bad, and nothing works. And you're the responsible person who brought all these people in they are waiting for me to say something smart so they can do what they can do. So it's just a horrible feeling. It's a lot of fun on a set, of course. I work really hard to just have nice people on set and don't work too long hours and all that stuff. But for me personally, it's a nightmare.
So it's actually like making a film festival.
Yes, exactly the same.
I think for me, it's mostly having this luxury to indulge myself with a topic that I'm interested in for a long time, and otherwise I wouldn't have that. So I invest time and energy and money in and it might be that I have the images I want to see, and I try to get there and create them somehow, or it might be a process that I'm interested in, or a certain exchange with other people. And in this framework, it's possible for me. So it's more, I would not know where outside of art making I could reach that. So it's quite feels like a necessity to then find a certain framework where I can go into the things that interest me so deeply and so in such a way that feels like a luxury sometimes. Yeah. And of course, it's limited by whatever resources there are. But yeah.
I think I enjoy most of it, which is weird now that I come to think about it. That I enjoy thinking about the film before we get to the set. I enjoy being on set tremendously. What I enjoy most about being on set is those moments when there's adversity and we all overcome it together as a crew to get the film done, whatever it needs to be, or whatever new idea comes up in the moment that's nearly impossible to make it happen and trying to anyway. I also enjoy not editing. I'm glad that I don't do that. Because when I've done it in the past, I really struggled with letting go of the material that I've shot. So that's why I distance myself from that part. But I also enjoy a lot sharing it with audiences afterwards, and hopefully we made them feel something and seeing what that was, rather than expecting that they enjoy it. Just like knowing if what we felt doing it is in any way similar to what they felt watching it.
Yeah, my favorite part of the process is when things go right. I think you can put it that way. It's just as simple. No, I really do enjoy and those moments where I'm like, oh God, that's why I want to do this, or that's why we're here. It's pretty much it's similar to Blake's experience. I think it's when you in the editing room when you put two shots together and they work, or you ensemble a scene or a series of scenes and they convey something. I think it's the conveying of emotion that is important for me. I also really love rehearsals with actors. I love that. I love doing voiceovers too, like the voiceovers you do in post to add to the actual movie, because it's like going back to the acting in a way. Yeah, I really like working with actors, and I think also that that conveying of things, or that one shot plus other shot conveys a thing, is important to me in editing, is because I've come out of the horrible stage that is filming. Because in development and pre-production, you're still, obviously in development and pre-production a little bit less, but you're still aware of your initial ideas or your intentions, and then it, at least for me, and when you're actually shooting, I know when things, like I can rationally know when things are right and when things are wrong, and what I like and what I don't like, what I need, what I don't need. But it's more like knowing it, not feeling it. And I feel it until, you know, what the mix of those things that we did, what I did almost mechanically on set, that, you know, and also they feel a little bit soulless because, you know, time and money and, you know, schedules. But they, you know, kind of like get their soul back when you watch them in editing, in a way. So yeah, that's my favorite part.
Is anyone optimistic when editing?
Oh no, it's difficult. Until the very end. But I hate first cuts. It's like,
I get surprised because this film I didn't even manage to finish editing. I just sent it to Rotterdam. Ooh. And like I need someone to say, okay, we get it, and to be able to finish it, because I think it's so horrible. It's completely shit. So I was just wondering if anyone actually have optimism one day.
To me, it's the best. I mean, it's the only part in a way. Like the first several films that I even made that showed in a professional context were found footage films, and so I got to skip over the part that I hate, which is the shooting, and go just immediately into editing, which is I'll go into sit down at my desk to edit for the day at 9 a.m. and I feel like I've edited for half an hour and it's already time to go to bed. Like the day just flies by because I'm completely in a zone and in a headspace where that is not like that. But yeah, I think it's because of what you were saying about like when you're on. I mean, I've never been on set because I don't work with actors usually, but even when I'm out with my camera trying to capture things and shoot things and create that database of footage, it's very nerve-wracking. Like I feel like there's an enormous time pressure, even though I'm not working with a crew or on a set, just because like I feel like if I don't start the camera at just the right moment, I'll miss the thing, and then I'll always feel the lack of that shot that I could have gotten if I had set up the tripod just a little bit quicker, or if the person in the background hadn't walked into the shot or something. Like it always feels like there's something that's going to go wrong when I'm shooting, and so I can't stand that, and which is kind of why I like to gather footage, I think, just to have footage and not for a particular project in mind. Because if I have a project in mind, then I'm out in the world looking for signs. Like I'm creating signs. Like I'm trying to create things according to an image that I have in my head, and there will never be a match between those two things. And so I need to just find things that work in that moment, and then just retrospectively revisit those moments and structure them that way. And that's when I find all of the joy. And I come from an artist background. Like I never went to film school. I only went to art school. I did studio art in Boston for a bachelor's degree. And then I got my master's in Toronto, which is why I moved there in order to, which is why I moved there, and which was also a studio art program. And like many artists, more than filmmakers, it's a very individual process, and it's just me and the materials, and I'm just working through my own instincts and creating an image of something, whether it's as a sculpture or an installation or as a painting. And the moment other people get involved, it's like, why are you picking up a paintbrush and painting on my canvas? Like this is my thing. This is my view of the world, and so that's. Yeah, just I didn't really respond to the freedom question, but to me, like the work has to be a complete freedom and of everything me, and otherwise it starts. I lose my grasp on what it is, and it becomes something. It just becomes an image rather than like an image of thought.
I know we're short on audience, but I don't want to be a question hoarder. I just want to ask if someone has any kind of question that may like to ask to the filmmakers here present, please, because time is running. So,
I would like to know if you have any advice if we are starting on this world filming in a way that I can afford a lot of money, so it's more like start like a small project, and how do I get started with it?
For me, just find what you have in your life, the places you know, like if you have a emotional or nostalgic connections to locations and places, stuff like that. That's really helpful when you write, because then it feels meaningful when finding images that maybe other people don't see. And then when you put it in a film context, it's usually you can feel the personal aspects of it. But yeah, and I don't know, it's very difficult because people make films in so many different ways, but try not to write films where the acting is very important. So know how the acting style will be played out. Because if you write a script that is just dialogue and very dramatic, the actors are going to carry the whole dramatic element. You don't have good actors, or if you don't have experience directing, then it's going to be very bad very quickly. So I think that's, for me, that's what I found out, that try not to overdo things, just make it very simple.
I think do what excites you and don't
Yeah.
worry what other people might think of it.
Yeah, I would just say, like, along those lines, like, don't try to make something that looks like what you believe to be the idea of what a good movie is. Like, just make something that brings you pleasure, and also I think something that you can do on your own, in my opinion. Like, once you can work amongst yourself with your own tools, then you can start to bring other people in to help you with the things that you feel like where you have a lack. But if you can figure out how to make something on your own, then you can always make something, even if funding falls through, or if you can't get a crew together. If you know how to make a movie just with yourself, then you'll always have what you need to make a movie, and then you can wait for the project that will come down the line that'll be a bit more ambitious, that does need money, that does need actors or something. But for 10 years now, I've been making movies with just my cameras and objects, and I love them. So that's it's the most important thing.
I watched a lot of films and try to figure out how they make them, and read about film theory, or not even film theory, just read about theories of images and music and sound and art and all that stuff. Philosophy is very important.
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, I don't think I'm qualified to answer that question. Good advice, though. No, I would say, yeah, getting to know the film language and seeing it as a language, and you can do that in many ways, watching a lot of films or reading film theory. And I would say, also adding to your idea about what you said about the acting and the dialogue and whatever, especially when starting, the school or stuff like that, it's important to think in images as a base of the language, but also think of something that has been very valuable to me, that one Costa Rican filmmaker, Alexandra Tishev, said to me, is think of sensations. Think of, because you can think of images, but then I think we all in school get to that point where we over-reference, to make the kind of movies that we like to watch. So sometimes is you're better off staying away from it and just think about what is the feeling that you want to convey. It can be a feeling, it can be a concept, it can be an idea, it can be a physical sensation. How do I feel? Where do I put the camera? How do I move or not move the camera? How do I cut? To make, to convey heat, to convey, it can be things as vague as sadness, but also it can be cold. That awkward moment when whatever. Thinking more of the feelings, of sensations. I think that's an advice that someone else gave to me that I could share with you.
And most of your first films will be very bad anyway, so try not to.
Or not, maybe he's a genius.
Oh, maybe, yeah.
We don't know that.
Some people, it's weird. Some people make their first films and it's really good. I don't get it. But if you finish it and then you probably learned so much already that you think the film you made was bad. So next one, okay, now next one's going to be better. So you manage to have the energy to keep going. Certainly it will be good. Try, yeah. I wish someone told me that.
Sounds important. If no one has any further questions, I think maybe we should wrap up because it's kind of late. But I want to make some publicity. We have the luck today to present 3 of the films of the people that are here. Blake Williams' film is Womanscapes presents at 6:30 p.m. on Cinemex Insurgentes. Yes, it's a 3D film that you can skip. Tell it. Come on. No, I'm just saying. I'm just saying. I'm just watching you to let me know if the information is correct. Yes.
Well,
no.
I mean, you told me this information like 2 hours ago.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but don't look at the schedule because the screening time changed. It's not at 6.
Yeah, another advice: don't make 3D films. They are hard to screen. They're a bit complicated. No, but El Agua screens as well on the same cinema at 8:30 by Elena, and Ricky Dambrow's film screens at Cineteca Nacional at 6 p.m. So thank you so much for joining us, and I will encourage you to clap to this beautiful panel if you can.